Hey you guys, I'm over here at my friend Peggy's house and I'm planting a tree today, so I thought it'd be a good time to make a video on how to plant a tree. First off, there's no right way to plant a tree. There's a million different ways to plant a tree. So this is just the way I plant a peach tree, because that's what I'm planting today. So right over here we have a beautiful Florida Prince peach, and this spot was chosen because it gets a lot of sun, and that's what a peach tree needs to be really productive. So we looked at some spots out here, but the property line was just a little too close. It was going to be in the neighbor's yard, but there's an advantage here. It's going to be in the backyard. Some of the disadvantages, though, you can see here's the gate. We gotta have the peaches up high. They're not going to be pickable peaches. They're going to be, you know, fruit picker, pole picker peaches. And because we need a path right through here past that little satsuma we planted last year. It's doing well. So peach trees, the way I plant a peach tree is going to be different than another tree, but in general you want to plant your tree here in Houston above grade, but you also don't want to plant your tree in straight or organic matter. So if you plant your tree in too much organic matter, like the stuff in the pot, then it's going to get really wobbly over time because the organic matter just disappears. So we're going to use the field soil underneath and dig a pit essentially to quarry that and build it up, and then use the organic matter around the rest. So here's the soil profile. We have some good organic matter, and then we're getting into some pretty slick clay fill and fairly low internal drainage. That's the thing that I can observe right off the bat, is very slow to drain. Not pure clay or anything, a lot of silt, but pretty heavy. So this material is what we want our tree to be in, and we want its roots to flare out into it, but I wish I had twice as much because I want to get this tree up high. When you're dealing with peach trees, they need really good internal drainage. They're pretty susceptible to root rot, so I want to get it, so here's grade, I want to get it, you know, at least 6 inches, and that's 8 on the back of that. So I was going to shoot for the top of that because everything is going to settle. Even this heavier field soil is still going to settle over time, at least an inch or two, because look at all the air gaps I created, and they're still going to be there, so it'll sink and settle. So I need some more material, and it looks like this hole, because I need a path right here, is about as big as I can get it, and because the quality went down really fast right there, I'm gonna go dig a hole somewhere else in the yard. Shh, don't tell, I'll fill it back in with. The other thing I'm gonna do is that I brought this soil, and this is actually probably good enough to use mixed in, because it's got a lot of sand in it. See, there is a good bit of organic matter, but it's pretty far broken down. This was like a vegetable planting mix for bulk soil, and so I'm going to mix that into there, and that little bit of organic matter is going to help create some internal drainage. There's thresholds for everything, and seeing how heavy and dense that is, I don't really want to add too much sand to it, but I think this is enough organic matter that it's going to burn off, rather than just, you know, creating more compaction and filling in all those gaps. So I'm going to mix this in as well, but I'm also going to quarry more soil and fill up this space. An ideal tool would be a garden fork, not a shovel. I'm going to take longer and chop up a bunch of worms. Alright, so So come see what I got. Okay, so here's my material. It crumbled pretty well because we're dry right now, and so that heavier soil had good tilth after all, especially when I added that little bit of organic matter and sand. And so this is just my material for the immediate area around the base of that tree, and I want to be able to give those roots a chance to move horizontally and slope out into this stuff. But after that, it's all going to need more material to kind of fill in the crown and other things that aren't as the immediate need. So this immediate area is where the roots are going to be, like in the next, month, right, in this first growth surge. And so these outer edges can have bigger air gaps in the dirt clods, poorer soil, things like that, because it is all going to get improved and settle over time. So I'm going to plant into this right now, and then you're going to see I've got this much compost that's all going to go top dress, and this much mulch for filling in that hole, and this might not even be enough mulch, and I might incorporate the rest of this sandy soil. And as far as amendments, I have a little bit of sulfur, that's pelletized sulfur, and then Microlife I'm going to add a little bit as well. With all this great organic matter, like logs, so that is kind of like the life well. That is going to have the moisture stay in that hole longer, and it's going to feed nutrient towards this tree. There's still enough space, this is maybe 2 or 3 feet, so that the roots can run around that pit for structure, but they can also access that pit for moisture. This is the closest I would ever put a life well to the tree, because you want to have good structural spread on your root system, and that big pit and all of this organic matter and things that need to heal in might compromise that. So try to keep it a little bit further away, but we had a path right there, and so that's why it had to be pretty close by right here. Some sulfur just to show you that I do use amendments sometimes, not that they're always necessary. I think the organic matter can do a lot, but peach trees, because they prefer a sandy soil, they would have a little bit more acidity than say something that preferred a heavy clay soil like a persimmon. So don't sulfur your persimmons. And that was nothing, that was like a blip. This tree came from Houston Garden Center. The trees at Houston Garden Centers are usually pretty abused, pretty poor quality, so you have to give them some time to grow out of it. I'm going to make at least good connection. If you can, you want to find some main laterals to at least spread them out if you can, but when you can't, you're just going to trust that that tree can adapt over time. Another thing to do though is to look for the crown of your tree. So I'm pulling off root suckers. This is the graft point right here. Anything below this is not going to be Florida Prince. So I'm going to pull these off, and I'm going to look down for structural flaring out. That is where the actual top of the tree is. And you can see, fortunately, it's adjusted and there's a good flare right there, so I don't have to pull back very much. As far as these roots at the base, they are going to grow out fast, but what I can do is I can get some of this really junky organic matter out of the way so that it can connect with this kind of soil. So when you do this, when you disturb the root system, you need to be aware that it puts more stress on the leaf surface area up above, on the immediate tree. And so if I was planting in a dryland situation, if I was planting where I wouldn't be able to come back and monitor the tree, then I would not do near as much disturbance to the roots, or I would plant in the dead of winter in the fall. So yeah, there's not a lot of structure that I can show you guys, but things did get loosened up. I'm going to be looking to keep the trunk far away from the fence. And I'm also looking at these branches. So up above, what's cool about this tree is it has a really high initial branch point, and normally that's not what you want in a peach tree. You want your branches down here. And so if you bought this tree from Houston Garden Center for like 10 or 20 bucks when they're on sale, what you would do is you would cut it really low. You would hack it off, and then these would become your main lateral branches. However, because we're up against the fence and we're up against the path, we actually want our branches up high, almost at head height. And so this tree is perfect form structurally up above for this space. So here's the top of the tree, and it is nearly level with my fiberglass backstop to protect the fence on the back side. And so this is how high I'm going to plant it, knowing that it's going to settle, and knowing that I only have about 6 inches of topsoil before I hit some funky construction fill clay kind of stuff. And so that's it. I'm going to heel this in, and I'm going to try and make sure that all of the soil that comes in contact with my root ball or my pot is crumbly loose, so there's not big air gaps, and is also not a lot of organic matter. So in particular, what can really do harm if you're planting smaller transplants or even larger trees is dry leaves. You know, putting them down is kind of like razor blades in the baby crib. It's not good. So you want to avoid that. And this is ridiculously high, I know, but it's going to settle. This peach is sitting in 100% organic matter. All of this material, its volume is going to disappear. It's going to settle a lot. I'd say over the life of this tree, it's going to drop at least 4 to 6 inches. So that's going to put it still above ground level for when we get those really heavy rains. Standing water might be in this area for a little bit, or at least really heavy wet soil. It's going to have this mound to breathe from, and that's really important. So now I'm going to do my compost layer. I took all that time to break up my field soil, make sure it had a little bit of organic matter, fertility kind of thing to it, but mainly it's about good soil connection and a gradual, as much as possible, slope away from the crown of the tree, or the top. So here it's a little steep, and I wish I had more soil. I would have built up more, or if I had an edge, might be the way to go here. I could get some concrete block or rubble or a log even to hold back the soil, since I don't have a lot of my really good field soil. So now I'm going to add the compost layer and get it all watered in, and then after that I'm going to add the mulch layer. Look at that big guy. That's an Alabama jumper. So this is the compost that I'm using. It's just bags of leaves from the curb, and you can see it's not fully broken down, but it is pretty fertile, full of life, and so it's going to add a lot as it continues to break down. It will really help to heal the soil underneath it, all that stuff that had clods in it and things like that. This nice thick layer is going to do a lot for that. Alright you guys, so that's how I planted this peach tree. There's zero mulch or other stuff piled up right here. This is exactly where that root flare started to happen. So I'm not covering it up very deeply. I'm not piling up organic matter on the trunk. It's a lot of time and energy invested, but this is for the long-term health of the tree. We only get one chance to plant the tree, you know, throughout its lifetime, unless you dig it up and plant it again. But you want to put in the extra effort. So this took me maybe 3 hours, but I also was running back and forth. But it was worth it. And I always take the extra time up front to plant the tree, because then you have to do less work in the long run. This tree, after I get it watered in really well, like I'm doing now, the compost mulch fully saturated, it really doesn't need any help probably ever. Maybe coming back once a year for the first few years with compost or mulch to give it, you know, feed it organic matter, protect the soil, because this will disappear. But after the tree's able to shade its own soil, after it's got a lot of good connections, it's able to thrive on its own because it's planted high. It has a water well that I'm sitting on top of edge, right? It's just an edge in the field soil underneath. But right here, you know, this is going to change over time. All of these logs came from father tree, and so it's going to feed and nurture the space over time. So a lot of really good things happening for this peach tree. So you see I removed the stake from the tree. That's really just for when they're being transported and in the nursery yard. And you can stake beside your tree as long as it's not pulling it really rigid, because this sway that's happening right here is going to be the main factor that forces this tree to get some good structure, some integrity on those lateral roots that will help support it later in life. So we want it to have the sway, and since it's got a fence on almost all sides, there's very little wind exposure. So even if this had a pretty decent leaf load, I think well, it might be above the fence, but I don't think it's in any danger of toppling over, and so I'm not going to stake it. Whenever you can avoid doing something or not do something, then you don't do it, and that's how you make the plants stronger, more adapted to how they're going to be in the long run. Hope you guys got something out of that video, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.